Hey, you listen to a Bible Brodown Minicast. I'm Matt.
And this is Billy, and we love doing these things. I like these short little questions where we're not necessarily going to go super deep, but sometimes we do go deep.
I was going to say, we're about to go pretty deep.
I know. That's why I had to rephrase that. But we can just ask, questions that are interesting, I think, in this one.
So, Billy, explain to me something that you posted recently and you added to our blog on the front page, actually, Bible Brodown right now, called Sinful Nature, about the three lusts, I guess you could call it. I don't know. Explain to us what it is, and then I'll ask my question.
So there's Matt was raised, I was raised, most people were raised with the idea that we've inherited a quote-unquote sinful nature. And basically it means that when Adam and Eve sinned, something ontologically or supernaturally changed in our bodies or in our... you can't say spirits at all, because it says that God breathes our spirit into us when we're born. So you can't say that, because that's like saying God breathed a corrupted spirit into us, and I don't think that's the case. So it had to happen within our physical bodies, our bodies of flesh, right? That they say.
So you're saying their wanters were different than our wanters. Like we want stuff that's different than them.
Yes, that's what people think occurred through the fall, and we've seen that this isn't the case. And we posted this article and some questions about this on some various Facebook groups to include our own, and got some, responses that, some people disagreed. Some people said, oh, wow, that makes sense, that kind of thing. So we just wanted to discuss that because it's interesting. So we basically say that since Adam and Eve, our flesh has been weak, that it's never not been weak. And it's weak for a reason, because God wants to seek he who is strong. But anyway, Matthew 26:41 says, keep watching and praying that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. That's Christ speaking of our bodies, right? That our spirit is willing to follow the Lord, to follow him, to do things, but sometimes our flesh persuades us to do other things. It's weak. Romans 6:17-19, Paul says, but thanks be to God that though you were slaves of sin, you became obedient from the heart, so that form of teaching to which you were committed and have been freed from sin, you became slaves of righteousness. I'm speaking in human terms because of the weakness of your flesh. But just as you presented your members as slaves to impurity and lawlessness, resulting in further lawlessness, so now present your members as slaves to righteousness, resulting in sanctification. Again, the point of this is that both Paul and Christ speak of the flesh being weak. It has within it desires that can lead to sin. Mm-hmm. But not every desire of our flesh is innately sinful. Everybody knows that, when you're thirsty, your flesh, your body produces the desire for thirst, and that's a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. Even with thirstiness, if all you have is alcoholic beverages around and you follow that quote unquote thirst for a bunch of alcohol, that can lead to drunkenness, which is a sin. Same thing, the flesh pushes us to seek sustenance, seek nutrients in order to survive.
Procreation.
And if you follow that too much, you can become gluttonous, and that's a sin. So there are things within our bodies that are basically, I would say, are amoral. Is that correct?
They're not one way or the other.
Right.
I mean, like we talked about in the last minicast last Thursday, you are allowed to long after your spouse. Right? Don't long after someone who's not your spouse.
Right.
It's like you could take it too far.
Right. Well, we see that the flesh pushes us to eat, etc., etc. So we also learn in 1 John 2:16 that these desires from the flesh are not of God, they're of the world. Right? For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. And what's interesting, let's talk about these. What is the lust of the flesh? I think most people understand what it means, right? It means
it's like you said, hunger is a lust of the flesh. Sexual attraction is a lust of the flesh. Anything that is your body desiring or craving something, lust of the flesh.
Yeah, in this specific instance, in 1 John 2:16, the word for lust is a little bit different. It's Greek Strong's Concordance 1939, epithumia. It is desire or craving what is forbidden. That's the bad thing, right? What is forbidden. So it's okay to eat food. That's not forbidden. That's not, quote unquote, the lust of the flesh in essence, but it's what's forbidden. So Paul says in Galatians 5:16, live by the Spirit and you will not carry out the desires of the flesh. These desires are of the world, and as James says, each one is tempted when he's lured, enticed by his own desires. So when you are enticed by your own desires and you allow that to come forth and you follow those lustful desires, that breeds forth sin. The lust of the eyes, I think is pretty self-explanatory. It's the same kind of word as before, the lust, right? So looking upon something and craving what is forbidden. That could better be said as coveting, right? Coveting what is forbidden, right? Coveting.
Don't covet your neighbor's wife.
Yeah, that's obviously forbidden.
Yeah. One of mine is don't covet that muscle car. I'll speed up just to follow an old Mustang.
Right.
They're so pretty. Yeah.
And people think that all coveting is bad, and it's not. I see on Facebook a lot, coveting your prayers. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
It's not forbidden to want somebody to pray for you. That's a good thing. So Jesus says of the lust of the eyes, if your eye entices you to sin, pluck it out and throw it from you. It's better to enter life with one eye than to have two eyes and be cast into the fire of hell. Then the pride of life. It's a good translation, but it misses like the core of the issue. The word is Greek Concordance 212, alazonia. I'm saying this completely wrong. I know all you Greek scholars out there. It means an insolent and empty assurance, which trusts in its own power and resources and shamefully despises and violates divine laws. The word for life here is bios and means life or one's own life. So to be more precise of what this means is that one is boasting and trusting in one's own life.
Yeah, you're very proud of yourself. We read this, I think, almost every podcast now, but Jeremiah 17:5, curses the man who trusts in mankind and makes flesh his strength, and whose heart turns away from the Lord. Right. So, pride of life, you're very proud of yourself and all the things that you can do, and all of a sudden...
you seek out for your own stuff. You know,
Third soil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want this, I want my own treasure, and I want this and that. That's you trusting yourself and boasting yourself and seeking it for yourself. So these three things are the pathway that leads to all sin. We have these desires, and if we obey these desires versus God, we sin. And that's what James says in chapter 1, verses 14 to 16. But each one is tempted when he's carried away and enticed by his own lust. Then when lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and when sin is accomplished, it brings forth death. So that's what he says. So now, did we get these things from the fall? No, we didn't.
Lies.
And we can see these exact three things. So again, we have the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Genesis 3:6. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took from its fruit and ate, and she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. So the serpent persuaded Eve to appeal and trust in herself instead of God. Follow your flesh, follow the world instead of God. So the woman saw that the tree was good for food. That's the lust of the flesh. She was desiring what is forbidden, right, for her body. God said that she can't eat of the tree of the tree of life. No, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and she desired what she was forbidden. It was a delight to the eyes. She looked upon it with, again, it's forbidden, and she lusted after it with her eyes, and then desired to make one wise. That's the pride of life. She was focused on herself and her own wisdom, and trusting in herself and pursuing things after herself instead of God. So these three things, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, were all already, quote unquote, in the world.
Yep.
So what I say to people is that if these are the three things that lead us to sin, and these same three things were already within our first parents, then there wasn't some ontologically thing that changed. There was repercussions for them following this. That was the curse, right? That was, quote unquote, the fall. They got ejected from the garden. They got separated from God. They
was death.
Yeah, they lost access to the tree of life. All these things occurred. They had to now work for their food. All these things occurred. Those were all repercussions of the fall. But there was not some natural change within their flesh.
Yeah, okay, so you're saying that from the very beginning, when God created man and his wife, Adam and Eve, they had these desires within them. It's just part of being flesh, right? Mm-hmm. So when we were talking about this, when we were talking about what to talk about for the mini, I started thinking about 1 Corinthians 15. I'm going to read 42 through 44, I think. So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown a perishable body. It is raised an imperishable body. So it's contrasting flesh versus spirit. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a natural body. It is raised a spiritual body. There's a natural body. There's also a spiritual body. So all these things, perishable, dishonorable, weak, those are referring to natural body, the flesh. And then those things are imperishable. They are glory, raised in power. That relates to spiritual body. Mm-hmm. So my question, Billy, if the flesh is perishable, dishonorable, natural, weak, why did God give us a fleshly body? Why give us these desires that are going to cause us to want to sin? Do they cause us to sin? Do we choose to sin?
What causes you to sin is that you, as James says, each one is tempted when he is carried away and enticed by his own lust. Then when lust has conceived, who conceives that? Us. We're the ones. We set our mind on the flesh. We set our mind on the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. That's what conceives. It gives birth to sin. And when sin is accomplished, it brings forth death. That's what's before us. So by creation, by nature, the flesh is weak. We've stated that before, and that's what Paul even says here, is that it is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. So basically the question is, why did God make us perishable, make us without honor, make us weak? What is the point of that?
Mm-hmm. I'm asking you. Don't turn around on me.
Well, first of all, let's start it the easy way. If we are already born immortal, why do we need God?
We're not born immortal.
Right. So we're sown with a perishable body, and God has set eternity in our hearts so that we seek him for the imperishable body. Right?
Yes. Okay. So I'm with you.
So why are we sown in quote unquote disgrace or without grace and raised in glory? Or, I mean, these are really contrasted. We're sown in, it is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. Those are kind of like two opposite things. So you could say it is sown without glory. It is raised in glory. So if we don't have glory within our body, and who do we have to seek in order to get glory? God. Yeah. It is sown in weakness, right? So we are weak, right? Isn't there a passage that says, where I am weak, he is strong?
Well, you just read it. But also the spirit is willing,
right?
But the flesh is weak. Yeah.
Right. So all these things are put before us in order to seek God, in order to trust in him and not ourselves. These are all learning things. God gave us the law as a tutor, to learn from right from wrong and to realize that we can't do this on our own. We can't meet his standards, so seek him. Right? God made us perishable, so we can't live forever on our own. So to seek him, he sowed us in disgrace without grace, or basically it's really in the sense it is raised in glory. I wonder. Let's look up that passage real quick. Is that word for glory there? What I think
doxa.
What I think it is.
Yeah, doxa.
Which is
it's glory, honor. It's the same thing that when we are expected to give God glory or honor or thanks. I mean, the glory and honor, it comes from doxology. That's when Paul is always praising people at the beginning of his letter, praising God, excuse me,
right.
At the beginning of his letters. Yeah.
Raising glory. So we don't have glory, so we have to seek him for glory. We're weak, so we have to seek his strength and seek him. That's the entire point of all of it. It goes back to, I've set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. I want you to choose life, right? So the choice is ours. We can choose to follow the weakness of our flesh and follow the desires of our flesh, right? But by themselves, again, the body is what it is. It's in essence amoral. It's going to die. We know that, but amorally on its own, it's just a body. Our will is what determines where that goes. We can sow to our flesh and sow to the lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, and the pride of life, and that will lead to sin and judgment and condemnation and curse. If we sow to the Spirit, that leads to glory, righteousness, honor, immortality, etc. That's why it's, in essence, part of the whole entire picture of God put the choice on us. He made us lower than the angels, as Christ took on a body lower than the angels. He did that so he could die for us and be like us, and we can recognize all that kind of thing. Well, he made us lower than the angels, in my personal view, for a reason, which is we're like almost a response to the angelic fall. Here, they're in a body that's not perishable, and it has glory, and it's not weak, right? They had all these things.
Spiritual bodies.
Right. They chose to not follow God. Here, we have people who are even weaker and lower, and he's put the choice before them, and that despite my own life, despite death, despite all these things, I'm going to trust in you, God. I'm going to trust in your word and your promises. You've made yourself known to me, not like you made yourself known to them, where you showed them your glory and they decided to rebel against you. You just made me known through the word and through your spirit, not in your presence, right? And I've still
okay. So because let me back up to the question.
Okay.
Why did God give us, starting with Adam and Eve, perishable, dishonorable, weak, natural bodies? Uh-huh. Your answer is so that we would seek him.
Right.
Even Adam and Eve, who were in the garden, didn't they have immortal, imperishable bodies?
Did they? They had to eat of the tree of life, didn't they?
Doesn't that where doesn't it say that? I'm joking. It doesn't say that in Genesis. Actually, right. It doesn't say that they were immortal on their own or that they were imperishable already. They were cut off from the tree of life. God even says, "Oh, they've eaten of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Let's not let them eat from the tree of life." He did not want that. So when it says, "You will surely die," when God told Adam and Eve that, they ate of it and they died. They were cut off from access to life, which means that they had perishable bodies all along. They required access to the tree of life in order to have an imperishable body. So, yeah, even from the very beginning, they were perishable. While they were good at the beginning, when by the time they died, when in this passage in 1 Corinthians 15, it says they were sown in dishonor, they were sown in weakness, they were sown in a natural body. That's talking about being buried. This is talking about resurrection, right? Resurrection from the dead. So how you went down into the ground, you were sown. They were sown in sin. They had sinned against God. They were sown cut off from Him. They were dishonored. They were sown weak, which the flesh, as we've already explained, is weak. So yeah, it's interesting. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole purpose behind every kingdom from Adam onward, He established the boundaries and times for all kingdoms so that they would seek Him. That's the point.
He's not far from us. Deuteronomy 30:19. I have called heaven and earth as a witness against you today that I've set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. So choose life in order that you may live, you and your descendants. That applied to Adam and Eve as well. They had life and death before them. They could either follow the Lord, walk by faith, right? God said, walk by faith, don't eat of this tree. That's all they had to do. Walk by faith and trust in His word. Trust that if they ate of the tree, they would be cursed, right? If they did eat of the tree, they would have life. They would be blessed. That was the exact same thing that was in front of them. That's the exact same thing that's in front of us.
Yep. This makes me... So we could go on about this topic, but this is a mini, so we're going to let it go here. But maybe next time we need to talk about, did God intend for the fall? Because you're saying He gave us weak bodies. They have lust of the flesh, the pride of life, the lust of the whatever the other one was. Was that His intention by giving us such weak bodies? Yeah, we're not going to answer that now. You have to come back next Thursday.
My mind is already spinning with things I want to say.
It'll be a mini, and Billy's going to send me 8 pages of notes.
Don't be a hater.
And then I'll cut out 6.5 pages and send it back to him and be like, let's talk about this. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks for that, Billy. Yeah. Anything else? Let's see. Where do they need to send us letters and tell us how wrong we are?
You can find that study on our page. We go into a little bit more detail. We talk about Psalm 51, which is often brought up about, David brought forth an iniquity and in sin my mother conceived me, and what that the two possible things that could mean and why it doesn't mean what most people think it is, that he was born, quote unquote, in sin, like he was born like evil or sinful, and etc. We go through that, and we also talk about infants and children a little bit in that study. So you can go out there to find those. It's BibleBrodown.com under studies, or just it's on the homepage. It's on one of the front pages because it's a recent study. So
all right. Until next time.
All right. Next time.